Welcome to the deep dive. We are digging into a challenging, but I think really essential stack of material today.
Yeah, it's all focused on leadership longevity.
Exactly. The topic is sustaining impact, resilience, renewal, and, well, long-term faithfulness in leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And for any of the high-capacity leaders listening, you know who you are. The sources hit you with something pretty confronting right out of the gate.
Oh, for sure. It's a bit of a wake-up call.
They say the most dangerous moment in your leadership is almost never failure.
Right, because failure is public, it's loud, it
Yes.
forces a reset.
Exactly. The real threat, the thing that gets you, is exhaustion. It's that quiet, that corrosive fatigue that just settles in after years and years of service.
And that's why we see so many committed, really capable leaders step back. It's not because the mission stops mattering to them.
No, not at all. It's because the pace, that rapid, visible pace we're all expected to keep, it just becomes unsustainable.
And that insight, it really forces us to reframe how we even measure success.
Oh, so?
Well, if the mission truly matters over decades, not just a few quarters, then the central question we're exploring for you today totally changes.
It becomes less about the start.
It becomes, what if the true measure of leadership isn't how powerfully or, how visibly you begin, but how faithfully you endure?
That's a huge shift.
It is.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at why our modern leadership culture rewards speed and that immediate visibility, even when that exact trajectory often leads straight toward personal collapse.
So our goal today is really to give you a shortcut, a thorough extraction of the costs of that culture.
The pressure for visibility, the demand for speed, the obsession with scale.
Right. And we're going to pull out some really counterintuitive practical frameworks for endurance and renewal, for creating lasting influence.
I want to make sure you gain the knowledge quickly, but also, thoroughly.
Okay, let's unpack this. So this hidden cost of speed versus what the sources call the quiet currency of endurance.
Yeah.
We all know it, right? Modern culture rewards the quick public wins.
It celebrates the launch, the spike in metrics, the scale.
But the sources warn that this pace it completely ignores the high emotional, the spiritual, and relational cost.
Yeah, and I found it striking that the material doesn't label burnout and spiritual dryness as, occasional failures.
No, it calls them recurring patterns, almost inevitable outcomes of a broken structure.
And that's the cruelest irony, isn't it? The very people who care the most, who are all in on making a difference.
The ones who serve boldly and give everything.
They're the ones most at risk of collapse, because they confuse sheer effort with actual sustainability.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, talent, which they obviously have in spades, that can carry leaders really far. But the sources are clear. Disciplined resilience would carry them farther.
So if you know the calling is costly, but you don't have the inner capacity to manage that load.
The collapse is really just a matter of time.
Okay, but wait. I want to push back on that a little. We operate in this competitive 24/7 world.
We do.
When we talk about resilience, it often just sounds like code for working harder, for absorbing more pressure.
Just toughing it out.
But the core takeaway nugget the sources highlight is, well, it's totally counterintuitive. It says long-term impact is rarely loud. It's built quietly, patiently, consistently.
And that's the critical mindset shift.
But how does that square with this relentless demand for constant visible productivity?
It's because we're operating under this really deep-seated assumption that slowing down means losing momentum.
Right. You take a break, you fall behind.
But the sources, they challenge that completely. They argue that rest is not the opposite of productivity.
It's the foundation of it.
It is the foundation. Think about it. If even Jesus, whose mission had, eternal urgency and infinite demand, if he regularly withdrew,
Then withdrawal isn't diluting the impact.
it's the primary way he sustained it.
So the problem isn't the commitment. Most of these leaders are deeply, deeply committed.
So.
The problem is structural.
Yeah.
It's sustainability. We're failing because we're trying to carry a long-term calling, a marathon. We're short-term strength. We're running it like a desperate sprint. And that failure to sustain, it brings us right to the core virtue needed for that marathon. Perseverance.
Right.
But we need to be clear here. The source material, it doesn't frame this as just, stoic survival or stubborn willpower.
Gritting your teeth and pushing through.
No, it's defined as a disciplined, grace-filled resilience that's formed through tested faith. It's about running the long-distance race that's marked out for us.
And that directly challenges this modern obsession we have with fast impact. The need for immediate scale, visible, quantifiable results. We're all addicted to our metrics.
Which is precisely why the reference to John 15, that metaphor of the vine and the branches, is so powerful.
Out about that.
Jesus defines success not by how quickly the fruit appears on the branch, but whether the fruit remains.
Remains.
Yes. And the specific Greek word used there is meno. It means to abide, to stay, to have durability. Okay, I think we need to just sit with that for a second. That's a profound insight for anyone listening.
It really is.
So Jesus isn't asking how intense was your season of ministry or how big was your launch.
No.
He's framing success as durability. He's asking how durable was the impact you created.
Exactly. And the difference is, well, it's profound. So many movements that burn the brightest, the ones fueled purely by intense charisma or unsustainable energy.
They fade the fastest.
They fade the fastest because passion without genuine character formation is actually pretty fragile. Endurance is the quiet, often overlooked test of every genuine calling.
So if endurance is the real measure, then our whole perspective on difficulty has to change.
Completely.
The sources argue that suffering, discouragement, we shouldn't see them as just setbacks. They're formative instruments.
Yeah, we spend so much energy trying to avoid trials, trying to get around them.
But the material reminds us that God's crafting hand often works most profoundly when circumstances are uncomfortable, when we're stretched beyond our own natural ego-driven capacities.
And this is where we really see the formative power of obscurity and delay.
Things we hate.
Things we absolutely hate. We celebrate the public debut, the big launch, but the real preparation almost always happens in the hidden places.
You see it everywhere in the biblical stories.
You do. Think about Moses. He spent 40 years shepherding flocks in Midian. He was essentially forgotten before he led Israel. Paul, after his dramatic conversion, just disappears into Arabia for years.
And Jesus, 30 years of hiddenness before 3 years of public ministry.
30 years.
That really puts a modern 2-month sabbatical into perspective, doesn't it?
It's deliberate. Obscurity is presented as this formative space. It's designed to strip our ambition of its ego and to purify our calling of self-interest.
It's about learning to obey when no one is watching.
Exactly. It roots your obedience in intimacy with God rather than in recognition from other people. Endurance is shaped where no one is watching. It cultivates an identity that can actually handle success later on without self-destructing.
That focus on obscurity, it transitions perfectly into Jesus' model of sustainable leadership. And it really is the ultimate paradox.
It is.
The most impactful leader in human history was deliberate and disciplined about withdrawal.
He wasn't just busy all the time, which is what we assume.
Not at all. He regularly retreated to lonely places to pray. He rested when the crowds pressed in on him. And he flatly declined misaligned opportunities, like when the crowds tried to force him to be king.
And this matters so intensely because Jesus understood a key principle. Unsustainable faithfulness eventually becomes unfaithfulness.
Then more about that.
When performance or compulsion, that need to do, replaces your true calling, your service actually becomes self-destructive. His impact wasn't diluted by his withdrawal.
It was sustained by it.
It was sustained by the replenishment. He modeled a rhythm, intense outpouring, followed by intentional, necessary withdrawal.
And the sources are so clear that burnout is a spiritual crisis. It's not just a logistical failure or a time management problem.
It's a crisis of misplaced identity, of distorted expectations.
Because we start to confuse our worth with our relentless work.
And the most dramatic illustration of this is Elijah. He collapses in despair under the broom tree, immediately after his greatest public victory on Mount Carmel.
Right after the big win.
Victory, success, public affirmation, none of it protected his soul from total exhaustion.
Wow. That runs counter to everything we're taught. Success is supposed to fuel you, make you want to double down.
But it actually made him more vulnerable. When you're running on adrenaline and public affirmation, the moment the external pressure subsides, the internal fuel tank is just. It's revealed as empty.
So what was God's response?
And that's the blueprint for renewal. He didn't offer a rebuke or a bigger mission. He gave him holistic care, sleep, food, silence, and then, only then, a renewed vision. Burnout is so often the result of faith being exercised without boundaries.
The implication for you as a learner is just undeniable. If the sinless Son of God required consistent rest, reflection, and renewal to maintain his calling.
How much more do we need it?
Exactly. How much more do we need to build sustainable structures into our demanding lives? Ignoring sustainability isn't heroic. It's just vulnerable.
And that vulnerability leads us straight to the practical application. We can't just talk about theology. We need architectures.
Architectures, I like that.
The structural practices that translate all these insights into a resilient life. First one, Sabbath as resistance.
Resistance.
We often treat Sabbath as a luxury, something we'll do if we have time. But the sources frame it as a spiritual discipline. It's a profound countercultural act.
Resistance against what?
Against the cultural lie that your value is tied to your productivity, that you are what you produce. It declares, structurally, that fruitfulness isn't just the product of human effort alone. It's an act of trust in God's provision.
So the resistance isn't just external against the culture. It's resistance against that internal voice that's screaming that the whole operation will fall apart if you stop striving for one day.
Precisely. Okay, second, boundaries as stewardship.
This one is hard for leaders.
It's so hard. Many leaders see boundaries saying no as a failure, like they're letting people down.
Right.
But boundaries are just wise stewardship of a finite resource.
Yep.
Your capacity. Saying no to a good but misaligned opportunity isn't a personal failure. It's obedience to God's wisdom for the long haul. It protects the calling and the soul needed to carry it.
I think people struggle here because they equate having a high capacity with having an infinite capacity.
And they aren't the same thing. Boundaries force us to be honest about our human limits.
Okay, what's third?
Third is community as preservation. Isolation is the silent killer of sustainable leadership. It just is.
You can't do it alone.
You cannot carry the mission alone. Leaders need spiritual companionship for accountability, for counsel. Moses understood this when he finally delegated responsibilities to the elders. You need people to reinforce your perseverance, to call out your blind spots, and to help share the load.
And finally, these architectures have to include a healthy way of dealing with failure.
Yes.
Because if you're out there striving and trying new things, failure is. It's just inevitable, yet it's the thing we hide the most.
But failure is formative, not final. The sources hold up Peter's denial and his restoration as the perfect example of this.
A pretty spectacular public failure.
The most public failure imaginable. He denies Christ 3 times, but Jesus commissions him afterward, asking him to feed my sheep. His calling wasn't nullified by his failure.
It was refined by it.
It was refined through humility and a new dependence on grace. Failure strips away that self-reliance, and it forces us back to the source of our true strength.
When you put all those architectures together, Sabbath, boundaries, community, a healthy view of failure, what they really call for is a core identity shift.
That's the heart of it.
Leadership that lasts have to prioritize abiding before achieving. Have to recognize that true, durable productivity flows from relational fidelity to Christ, not from our own relentless striving. It means you have to be content to labor unseen, to wait without anxiety, and to trust God with the final outcomes.
That beautifully summarizes the core distinction here. Endurance, as we've learned from the sources, isn't sustained by denying suffering or just by raw willpower.
No.
It's sustained by a clarity of hope, by trusting God across all the unfinished chapters of your life. Longevity is cultivated. It's grown through intentional architectural choices.
Those practiced rhythms and wise boundaries.
Right. They ensure your inner life is robust enough to carry your calling for the long term.
So we'll leave you with this final provocative thought to carry forward from this deep dive.
What would it look like?
Yeah. What would it look like for you to enter the later years of your leadership, not depleted, not burned out or disillusioned, but deeply rooted, still curious, still faithful, and still profoundly effective? The real question today isn't whether you can lead boldly in this moment. It's whether you're willing to learn how to lead wisely for a lifetime.